Number 1. So, this occurred many years ago, but it will stay with me forever, and has changed my views on allowing my own kids to ever have their own separate phone line. It was a few weeks after Christmas, and my parents had gotten me my own personal phone, with my own separate phone line, because that was the cool thing to do back then. You know, before cell phones were big. I had given all of my friends my new phone number, because who wouldn't? Anyway, it was around 3 in the morning, and I had been asleep, when my phone started to ring. That's odd, I thought. Who'd be calling me at 3 AM? We all have school in the morning. So I answered it, but all I could hear was breathing on the other end. I laughed it off as someone just messing around with me, and I hung up the phone. I tried returning to sleep, but my phone rang again. This time, I answered it and said, "Who is this?" Nothing, just breathing again. At this point, I was beginning to get irritated. I told them in a harsh tone to stop calling me, and I hung up the phone once again. I lay down again for about 30 minutes, when my phone rang yet again for the 3rd time. I was extremely mad, so I answered it and I said, "This isn't funny. I'm trying to sleep and I have school in the morning. Stop calling me." This time, there was a reply. It was a man's voice and sounded very gravelly. And he laughed and said, "I can see you. Why don't you come outside and play in the snow with me?" With that, I hung up. I ran to my parents' room, and I woke up my mum, telling her what just happened, and she, in turn, woke up my dad. They both get up out of bed, and my dad goes into my room and checks the windows and everything, makes sure that all of the locks on the doors are locked, and proceeds to tell me that it's just someone playing a sick joke, and that everything will be fine, and tells me to just unplug my phone from the outlet. So, I finally go back to sleep. My mum wakes me up in the morning to go to school. I get up and I start getting ready. I open my blinds to the window that faces the backyard and noticed that on this very frosty morning, there were handprints all over my window. I called my parents in there, totally freaked out, and my dad immediately calls the police. The police come over to take a report and look for evidence. And when they went to check out the backyard, sure enough, there was a set of footprints in the snow that led right up to my window. They had gone from the front of the house to my back window, back to the back door, and then back to the front door. The police think the guy tried to get inside of the house. Number 2. So, about a week and some change ago, I was up and about, getting ready for work. Now, my car was in the shop, so I was taking my fiancée's Subaru to work. What's different is that our apartment building only allows 1 sticker per unit for cars to park in the designated lot behind our apartment building. Since I had ever so cleverly forgotten to move the sticker to his car, he had to park in the parking lot of the bank, right next to our building. It was 5 AM, and still very dark out, but I made it to the car without incident. When you pull out of the parking lot, you have to pass through the Starbucks lot right next to it and turn left, which takes you to a 4-way stoplight on the main road. The light's red, so I'm sitting there, waiting, when I notice there's a girl coming onto the crosswalk. She looks behind her, visibly nervous, and then notices me and starts waving me down. Having common sense, my doors are locked, and I slightly crack my window while she stays a few steps away. "What's up?" I ask. She responded with, "Oh God. Hi. My name's Amanda. I live on the corner of De Quincy Street. I know this is going to sound really weird, but I was walking home and this minivan with these black guys has been following me the entire way. Please, I live like a minute away. Can you take me home? I kind of sat there for a moment, remembering past stories and such, but I sized her up. I could tell she wasn't drugged or high or anything. In fact, she was completely coherent, besides looking scared out of her mind. She didn't look like a prostitute or anything either, as she was bundled up in a scarf, boots and winter coat, definitely ready to walk through the cold. And then I looked down the street past her, and sure enough, there was a dark minivan, trailing slowly up the street towards us. This last fact convinced me that she was telling the truth, and I beckoned for her to get into the passenger side seat, unlocking my doors. Amanda hurried inside, and I greeted her with a, "Well, I really hope you're not some crazy chick that's gonna pull a knife on me," to which she laughed and said she just wanted to go home. We then drove the couple of minutes down the road to the street her house was on. She talked, thanked me for taking her home, and gave me her information and such, as well as keeping an eye on the minivan down the road. It was still behind us, down a ways. When we came upon her house, I stopped in front of a different one, telling her to hurry and that I'd keep an eye on her until she got inside. She thanked me again, and then booked it to the house she said was hers, going to a side door and waving to me before hurrying inside. With my job done, I hurry and make a U-turn in the street because it was so utterly empty outside, besides me and the minivan. I passed the vehicle heading back, and it was a moment later that the van also U-turned and was following me again. This made me nervous, so I took a couple of side roads and turns, and sure enough, the van stayed right behind me. When I stopped to get ready to turn onto the interstate, I call my fiancée, who was already awake, and I explain everything about what was currently happening. They mention that if they follow for 5 more minutes right on my heel, then I need to call the police. At this point, I turned onto the interstate, and the van was still behind me, and trailing me nearly bumper to bumper for a couple of minutes before speeding up to get next to me. When I look over, there are 2 black males, one which flipped me off, while the other did that stupid blowjob gesture where you stick your tongue in your cheek. I ignored them, but I was still incredibly nervous as they moved right in front of me and refused to let me pass them. Luckily, they passed the exit I had to take, and once I got off the highway, I was in the clear. Looking back on it, I realize now that the stretch of road that the Amanda girl would have had to walk to get home was without streetlights, and none of the businesses were open. It certainly scares me to think of what might have happened had I not been there. I also think the guys in the van probably left because they saw that she was no longer with me. Either way, I'm glad she's safe. Number 3. I'm a 21-year-old male, and I've recently moved out on my own into a new house. I'm still not 100% familiar with my own neighborhood yet. The way the neighborhood was built makes it a rectangular shape, with my house being at the top right corner of it. So, the other night at around 2:30 AM, I was in my house, alone, when I decided to take a break from playing guitar and to have a smoke before I went to bed. I grabbed a smoke and I headed out of my front door. These winter nights are chilly, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. About 3 minutes or so into my cigarette, I noticed this faint noise of what sounds like an old creaky metal object that needs to be oiled, but the sound has a cadence which makes it repeat every 2 or 3 seconds. After this happens for about 10 seconds, I notice that I can hear tires gripping the road as well. Then, out of nowhere, I see a man who looks to be about in his mid-40s, riding this horribly beaten down old bike that emitted a very intense, ear-piercing, high-pitched squeak every time he pedaled. As I stood in my driveway and he passed me, he kept moving forward, but his head slowly rotated left, and he locked eyes with me. I'm not kidding when I say this guy looked identical to Hannibal Lecter from the movies. But that's not what made my heart drop. As I'm locking eyes with this guy and he's moving past my driveway, he suddenly gives me the scariest, widest, jagged-toothed smile I have ever seen in my life. He keeps pedaling forward, but continues to lock eyes with me. Now, this wasn't an ordinary smile. I'm talking When the Grinch Stole Christmas ear-to-ear smile. Within about 15 more seconds, he continues pedaling and is out of sight. I can now just faintly hear his bicycle gears squeaking. At this point, I'm wondering whether or not he's going around my rectangular neighborhood block, and whether or not I can chief this cigarette fast enough to get inside before he comes around again. As I'm doing this, I begin to hear the metal creaking noise. But I also hear something different as well. This dude is laughing like a fucking maniac, which made me nope the hell out of there. As I'm stumbling for my door handle, he begins to round the turn where my door is almost in view. At the exact moment where I would have become visible, I got my door open, ran in, and slammed it shut. No sooner does my door close than I hear the man outside scream as loud as he can, "Where'd you go?" At this point, I went into full-out battle mode. I ran around my house and turned all of the lights off. I battle-crawled to my bedroom, and I waited. As I lay in my bed for the next 30 minutes, I would hear the squeaking of the bike for about 30 seconds every 3 to 4 minutes. About 3/4 of an hour later, it finally stopped, and the man was gone. I've actually quit smoking since then, and haven't been outside that late. But I shit you not, every now and then, at around 2:30 AM, I can still hear the squeaking of the bicycle from the outside of my room's window. Number 4. My mum grew up in a small town, and she had quite a few creepy encounters when she was a teen in the late 1970s. This is one of them. One night, her mother told her that she had to go and feed the cats, who lived in the outside sauna in the winter. She reluctantly went outside, since it was such a bitterly cold winter that year. She got halfway to the sauna, when she heard a man calling from the woods nearby. He was shouting, "Help me." This of course spooked her, and she ran back to the house and tried to tell her mum that there was someone outside yelling for help. Her mother said that it was most likely the wind, and to go back outside and feed the cats. She went back out and got about halfway to the sauna when she heard the man calling for her to help him again. She was 100% positive that it wasn't the wind, and this time made her mother come out to listen as well. Her mum did indeed hear the calls for help coming from the woods. She called for her husband, my grandfather, to go and have a look in the woods to see what it was. So, my mum's dad went out into the woods to see who was in need of assistance, and was stunned to find a man in a long winter coat standing in the woods near the house. When the man in the coat saw my grandpa, he ran towards the dirt road and got into a car that sped away quickly. I don't know what that man in the coat intended, but I'm glad that my family never had to find out. Number 5. About 6 years ago, I was a very pregnant woman at the mall. It was close to the holidays, and I had found a rockstar spot to park in, only 3 rows away from the main entrance, which I thought was great. Turns out, that close spot probably saved my life. I came out to my car after having my ring cleaned. I unlocked my car, opened the driver's door, tossed my purse in, and plopped down. Only to find a woman in my car. She had seen me come out to my car, followed me, and just got in when I unlocked my doors. I have keyless entry, 2 clicks to unopen all of the doors. I don't do that anymore. So, I don't close my door, and I put one leg back out so I can escape quickly if I need to. She starts telling me that her car wasn't working, and the towing company told her it would be a 3-hour wait. She wanted me to take her to a hotel on 95th and Main. I told her I couldn't. Something seemed off about her. You know, besides getting inside of a stranger's car. She kept telling me that she had nowhere else she could wait. All the while, she's buckling into the seat and putting her purse at her feet. I told her that the mall didn't close until 9 PM, and it was only about 3, and that she could go and wait inside. About this time, being a few weeks away from Christmas, cars had lined up behind me to take my spot. Someone, pissed for waiting, hopped out and started yelling about whether I was leaving now or not. That's when the woman took off. I told the person who was yelling what happened, and he offered to follow me out of the lot. It was only after I pulled out of the mall that I realized there isn't a hotel at that intersection. There isn't a hotel within 5 miles of that intersection. Hell, there isn't even a hotel on either one of those streets in either direction for that far. My pregnant brain didn't let me remember that while she was in the car. Hi guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. I think this was a nice little collection of stories for this festive period. Not nice as in cheerful, but certainly interesting. I think what I take away from them is that we should always listen to our guts in those situations where something just, feels off. And that's no less true this holiday season. So stay safe, and remember, the best things happen in the dark.